Hello and welcome to the All-Star Advocacy Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Castro. And today we have a very special guest joining us. He is a former professional baseball player, played for the St. Louis Cardinals, the Miami Marlins, and the KBO League NC Dinos. And he's now currently working for Major League Baseball. He is also our newest member of the All-Star Advocacy team. And we're bringing on today Poway's own Xavier Scruggs. Welcome, X. It's glad to have you on as our guest for our third episode now. How you doing?
Hey, man. Appreciate you having me. This is pretty cool to jump on here. Anytime I can kind of jump on and give my story and, kind of talk about the platform that I've had is very special to me. So I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, before we dive into things, I also have to give you a special shout out for, a cameo that you did this past weekend at our 2021 kickoff event for our San Diego youth. And, it was regarding our, the past ballot initiatives and where we're seeing things go here this next year into the spring and summer. And so I just wanted to thank you for being a part of that and engaging with our youth. I know, right, you're based out of Tampa, Florida at the moment, but just to have, a San Diegan who is, still involved in the community is huge. So before we even get going, I just want to say thank you for your time in doing that. Let's just, before we dive right into it, I just wanted to start with a kind of a broad question. It can be broad, it can be kind of specific, but what's one thing that you learned that you took away from in 2020?
The biggest thing I took away, I think, from 2020 was, and I think we take away a lot of things, but to invest in yourself. If you're a person that is really trying to grow and improve daily, 2020 was a real year to be able to get knocked off that horse, right? To be able to kind of be down in the dumps. But I thought it was an important year for self-reflection and to be able to say, okay, this is a year that I need to go harder. This is a year that I need to get better at what I'm doing. This is a year that I surround myself with better people. This is a year that I dive into something that I really love to do, because ultimately last year could have really destroyed a lot of people. And I think that's when we get over our toughest battles, I think that's a lot of times when we see our biggest blessings. So for me, I felt like it was important to invest in myself and to really understand how I can make myself better. So that was really important for me.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, and that investment and to you specifically, right? And the entrepreneurial stuff you have going on right now, we'll touch on that later on. But I think that really speaks to, the two ways you can take things is, given the circumstances and everything that happened with the pandemic and everything, really using that to fuel your fire. And like you said, just stay motivated, go twice as hard. So thank you. Yeah. So let's, I guess, take us back to, for those, guests that are listening and that may not know your full story, let's go back to where it all started. What was it like growing up here in Poway area in San Diego? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, man, I think that's a pretty deep question. In Poway, it was, all I can remember is just great community, great people around me to help raise me up. I had a lot of mentors, including a Tony Gwynn, including a David Justice, Rupert Jones. I can go down the list. I even still keep in contact with a lot of my high school teachers who have helped me put on fundraisers in San Diego. So I think of community. I think of all the people that kind of helped me mold into who I am today. I think of a lot of the sports that I was in and a lot of the people that became my teammates, a lot of the people that I ended up hanging out with, kind of turned me into who I am today. And it allows me to understand I'm very blessed, very privileged to be able to grow up in a community like that and be able to surround myself with some awesome people. I just think of, I grew up playing basketball, baseball, and football. And ultimately, I think, being able to surround myself in those sports and with people that were like-minded like me, allowed me to be able to say, okay, maybe I'm good at one of these sports and I can take it to the next level or get a scholarship or even go pro. So I think that was huge for me. And I can't take away anything that everybody has done for me back in my Poway community and my San Diego community, and turning me into who I am today.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, and so what age, you said you're multiple sport athlete, right? You were playing basketball, you're playing football. You grew up in a community where, multiple sport athlete, you're growing. And at what age did you, I guess, decide, like, I'm going to fully commit to baseball? That's the thing I want to pour everything, into. I want to use all my resources. Like you said, mentored by guys like Tony Gwynn, right? The top 5, if not, in my eyes, the best hitter in baseball. But like, how was that thought process in honing in all those, different sports to just, all right, I think I'm going to go for it with baseball?
Yeah, no, it wasn't something that was very tough for me, because I started realizing that football guys are way too strong for me. Basketball guys were getting way too tall for me. And I said, baseball is something where I can just hit and hopefully jog around the bases as much as possible. Play a little defense and enjoy time with the boys, something that I was attracted to at a very young age. And I specifically remember when I was 12, I think I was 12 when the Padres took on the Yankees in 1998 World Series. And even though they got swept, it was a time that I really fell in love with the game. Being able to see guys that were from San Diego or that played for the team play for an ultimate championship, a World Series. Like, it doesn't get much better than that, to be able to root for somebody like that, and root for a team like that. So that was really cool for me. I saw, even though the Padres lost, I saw the Yankees jumping around on each other after they won the World Series and crying and so many emotions. And I'm like, man, I want to play a sport that brings out all these emotions. And baseball was it for me from that day forward. So I think I ended up getting to my junior year when I kind of said, okay, let's put down the basketball. And then after my junior year, I said, let's put down the football and then just focus strictly on baseball from there on out.
Got it. And so during that time, I mean, obviously, around that time, we're at the biggest stage, the Padres against the Yankees in that World Series, hometown team. But who were some other players that you looked up to at that age, that middle school, high school, that really drove your interest in the game?
Yeah, I think for me, it was, besides Tony Gwynn, I feel like another big one for me was Gary Sheffield. That was somebody who I watched. The way he just attacked the baseball was somebody that I loved just seeing on TV, somebody that I would go back in the backyard and go emulate. I think he was one of the big ones for me. And just talking about San Diego, not even just a player, but Bruce Bochy, the manager there. I played with his son, Brett Bochy, for a long time growing up. So I was able to firsthand see a lot of these major leaguers when we go to Qualcomm Stadium at the time. We would go see these guys and see how they got their work in, whether it be a Caminiti, whether it be who else was big at that time. Even seeing guys like now I'm forgetting names. A great Vaughn, like a great Vaughn was another big name at the time. So seeing some of these guys like firsthand get this work in, I was like, man, like this would be really cool to be a baseball player one day.
For sure. And so, that's already in your mindset, high school age, and then coming out of high school, I think I've heard on another interview you did, the team at that time was obviously, majority white. You were maybe one of 2 black kids on the team, and so I guess coming out of high school as a prospect, as getting some notoriety and making the local paper and really turning heads, you were recruited to play at UNLV. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's where I ended up going to school.
Okay, and so how was that college experience? Going from the community that you speak so highly about, that transition to playing for UNLV baseball.
Yeah, man, it was a tough transition. It wasn't anything easy. but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. When I was a junior and I had committed to UNLV, um, I realized that I was getting an opportunity a lot of guys weren't going to get. Playing baseball at the next level and getting a college scholarship and getting an education. That was something that was always important to me. I saw both my parents get a 4-year university education from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I was able to say, okay, that's something that I want to do as well. I want to experience college to the fullest. I want to go meet people and get away from home a little bit. So it was something that I always wanted to do, but the transition isn't easy because you're going from being one of the best players, you talk about the notoriety, and then you're going into, a situation where there's a lot of good players just like you. So you have to, revamp your image. You have to revamp who you are. You have to get back to working and figuring out how can you stand out at the next level. So it wasn't anything easy, but I knew once I was actually drafted out of high school to the Mariners, I knew there was opportunity for professional baseball later on down the road. So for me, I said, okay, let me give myself 3 good years to really work on what I need to work on and then get an opportunity to get drafted again as a junior at a UNLV. And God blessed me with the opportunity to do that. And I'm very thankful for that.
That's super important to hear, somebody just that story of being kind of a big fish in a small pond, and then just that transition to the next level for these high school athletes that are, thinking I'm a big deal. And then you just get to that next level and you find out, the work ethic is, I have to double everything. And that's maybe just to compete. And so that's awesome, man, that you were able to do that, and just understanding where you were in the draft coming out of high school and the recommitment. Hey, I'm going to get better. I'm going to hone these tools, and that'll put me in a better position here in a couple of years. And I'm going to get that, living away from home experience that, so many people, looking back on, say that was right when I needed to mature and see the world and get different perspectives on life. So you're, at the same time playing for UNLV, but I also heard that you were still getting maybe hitting lessons or being coached by or mentored by Tony Gwynn still during that undergrad period. Was that still kind of the case?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was disappointed because I didn't get to go to San Diego State. That's where I originally wanted to go, and he was coaching there at the time. But the one thing about Tony is he was always speaking highly of me, somebody that could easily be a recognizable person in my life, someone that was always willing to be open and give tips and whatnot. So I'm very thankful for that. But I had a lot of people that really helped guide me, a lot of mentors for me. And that's one of the biggest things I always tell people is make sure you surround yourself with the right people that are going to lift you up and get you better. And it's doesn't just have to be one person. It can be multiple different people, and taking whatever you need, one tidbit here and there from somebody is going to be very important. It's going to add up. So for me, that was something that I always wanted to do. No matter if I was at San Diego State or if I was somewhere else, I was going to find a way to get information from people and continue to make myself better.
As the saying goes, right? If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. So
absolutely,
it doesn't hurt to have, one of the best hitters of all time teaching you, the fundamentals and honing your craft. So let's just get into, you're out of college really, and you spent the next, 7 about years, going through the minor leagues, and that whole process in the minors, you were, had the opportunity to play abroad in some, other countries, Colombia and the Dominican Republic. What was that like? If you can kind of tell our listeners, just that experience living abroad and, seeing those different cultures, throughout that time, the food and dress and language and, just the way you took in those experiences living abroad during that time.
Yeah, those were really important times for me. Especially, I think the first time I went to Colombia, it's not a big winter ball league per se, but it was important for me to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to continue to make adjustments? there's things throughout a whole course of a season, you start to realize more and more about yourself. After my 2011 year, I believe it was important for me to say, okay, now I just have AA and AAA in front of me. I need to go play more games to figure out what are these things that I have to do to make these adjustments, whether it be mental, physical, and then just be able to have the experience to go somewhere else. I thought that was one of the best parts of it when I went to Colombia for the first time. It was like, okay, I get to see another culture. I get to experience a different way of doing things. And then you come back with a whole nother perspective of things. You could, whether that be baseball or life in general. I thought that was really important. And also because, I didn't speak the language at the time. I had taken Spanish courses, but I was nowhere near fluent. So it was cool for me to be able to dive into another language too, and be able to try to figure out how to communicate. So I thought that was a really cool part of it. And then I was in a really nice city. I was in Cartagena. A very beautiful, beautiful city in Colombia. And then speaking on the Dominican Republic, I had just had an opportunity to get to the big leagues, and I wanted to continue to figure out for myself how can I best put myself against the top competition, especially pitching wise. And a lot of those guys come from the Dominican. And
That's going to come out of the DR for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to face a better repertoire of pitches and start see more velo, the major league velo, and it comes straight from the Dominican. So that was something important for me to go over there. I played for the Gigantes, and we ended up winning a championship. And then talking about the cultural aspects of it, just learning how fortunate we are, man. The Dominican is really not in a great condition when it's compared to the United States whatsoever. So being able to see that just made me appreciate more where I am, where I come from, and not take it for granted.
Yeah, man. I can totally attest to that dynamic. I myself have been to the Dominican Republic. I went, about 4 or 5 years ago, my first time, and the most beautiful place. But you see very quickly, where the discrepancies are in terms of poverty level, and that in itself, the economics of that country really breeds this sense of urgency and appreciation for life. Don't get me wrong; they're beautiful people, right? But it's this willingness and hunger to make it. And I've never been to Colombia, but I've heard it's a beautiful place. It's a place that I love to get to. But exactly, just using those experiences and appreciating what you have, back home is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways is, lessons you can instill in your boys now and in your children, where we have things and where we're at, in terms of what we have, resources available to us. And, it's got to be tough to kind of find that middle ground of, not wanting, your kids to be taken care of, but at the same time, this complacency of, there's always going to be, guys that are out there working twice as hard. And, you were able to see that and grind it out through that time.
Yeah, man, I think just to touch on that point a little bit more is like I tell my wife all the time, I want to send my boys and me go along with them to the Dominican one day when they're old enough to be able to go out there to the fields and take ground balls with these guys and, play catch and hit and fly balls, whatever it may be, because then they get an opportunity to see how these guys are working for their livelihood. A lot of them aren't going to school. A lot of them don't have another job. Like, this is all that they have. So it's a different type of work ethic. It's life or death for a lot of them. So if my kids are able to see what that looks like, I think that will be able to change their perspective on some things, and not just be able to see it one time, but be able to see it multiple times, be able to revisit it, because I think a lot of times you need that stuff ingrained in you before you really start to take action and be able to understand it.
For sure. And I'm speaking as a former, youth. All of us really are at that time, the most important thing is that next day. And so the attention span is something you have to, drill in, those lessons. So I hear you, man. And so, you get through the minors, a good 7 years, paid in full. and you made it to, the league, Major League Baseball. So if you can, what was your kind of the show moment where you realize, okay, I've arrived, I'm here? Was it initially with the Cardinals, or maybe not until, you were with the Marlins after that, or what was that like?
Yeah, I think one of those first initial moments was, I think just facing, top tier pitching. I think when I had faced, I want to say it was a Roldis Chapman one time. It was kind of like, okay, like this ain't TV anymore. Like this is the real deal,
Coming at you
guys
live.
guys like Chris Sale, DeGrom. When you start to really go up to bat, and then you're able to kind of slow things down against some of those guys, be able to put some things aside and be like, okay, this ain't you clicking the TV on and seeing this dude pitch. No, you're getting to see it in the blink of an eye. So how can I slow this game down? And I think that's how I started to realize, okay, I'm here now. This is my job. This is what I need to do. Because when you first get to the big leagues, a lot of times it feels like cloud nine. You're just loving it. You're just kind of going through and not really slowing down the moment. So for me, that was important to try to really slow down the moment. And I think there was a game when I think I came in 2015. I didn't play much in 2014, but I came back up in 2015. And one of my first games, I was like 3 for 4 against the Marlins. And I kind of realized then it was like, okay, I can do this thing, like I can really hit up here. I belong up here. So that was another moment that was really big for me. And just, being able to be around a lot of the same guys that I came up with too, reminded me that, okay, if these guys are doing it, I can do it. It was really cool to be a part of that, because I realized nobody's like immune to having nerves or anxiousness or anything. Like all the guys that I worked with, they all went through the same stuff I did. So it was like, okay, if we're all doing it, we do it together. We all get better together. Like that was good for me to be able to see other guys that I came up with doing it as well.
Yeah, I can't help but think, a recent interview you did with some other local guys here, the Riding the Bus podcast, and just talking about those stories and that growth during that time specifically, that, you're also learning so much about life and trials and tribulations, and watching everyone at your level grind it out. And that's what makes it, that much more, rewarding when you get to that, top tier level, and, you're able to enjoy the process on the come up. So, so you played, here in the major leagues, and then you decided to head to Korea, and essentially, uproot, your small family that you had at that time to Korea, the other end of the world. Was it, the lessons that you learned and those experiences playing in, those Latin American countries early on that made you, kind of open to the idea of this next journey or this next opportunity in Korea?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of those things, being able to say, okay, I've been comfortable in other countries. Now, there's opportunity for me to be able to play every single day and not have to go up and down from the big leagues to AAA and do that repeatedly. It was like, okay, now I get an opportunity with the NC Dinos. They're looking for somebody to play every single day. You get guaranteed contract. And then there's the opportunity if you play well enough to come back to the state. So that was always a main goal for me. With those things being said, it was not an easy decision. I was never like, throughout the course of my career before then, I was never like, okay, let me go to Korea at some point. I didn't know anything about Korea. Yeah. So I was really like, I had to do my research, had to do my homework, had to call people and figure out, okay, what is it like over there?
And make sure it's the South. South where you're headed.
Absolutely. And it's funny that people still to this day are like, you went to South Korea, right? Not North Korea. And I was like, and so I always say, yes, I was in South Korea 100%. But and just trying to convince my wife to see and open her eyes to be able to say, okay, let's experience another culture. Let's have some different experiences across the world. So that was another tough thing, is just having that conversation. She wasn't even my wife at the time when I first got the offer. So we were engaged to be married about, I want to say, 3 or 4 weeks before I was supposed to go over to Korea. So luckily she ended up, through a lot of crying, a lot of praying, like luckily she ended up being able to say, okay, let's do it, because I told her I couldn't do it without her. It had to be with her. So she ended up saying, let's do it. And by the grace of God, we were able to go over there, had a great time, had our first son over there, Zeke. So that was an experience in itself. And then just played with a good team, man. I met a lot of good guys, experienced an amazing culture, and hoping to at least go back and be able to see some old friends here soon.
Yeah, man. I feel like just by following your social media and, kind of what you continue to really post about and reflect on about your time there, just how you guys went all in on that journey, and ended up reaping just growth out of it. Obviously, you're expanding your family, but now being back in the States, just having just really great experiences to talk about in terms of that journey, right? So then in 2019, you deal with an injury, baseball-related injury. You tear your Achilles.
And that was 2020.
That was 2020. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were playing all through 2019, and then, of course.
Yeah, 2019, I played in Mexico.
That's right. And that's where you met Bruce.
Yeah, that's where I met Bruce Maxwell. One of the first games we had, I think it was over there, and just was able to talk to him and say, hey, man, what he'll tell you, one of the first things I said is, I appreciate you for taking a stand. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you had the balls to stand up for what you believed in. And I thought that was something that he was owed. I think a lot of people owed him that respect, to be able to say, hey, maybe people saw it in the wrong light at the time, but look, you did something that was huge. And I think that needed to be recognized. And that was the first thing I told him when I saw him, because I hadn't even seen him up until that point. We played against each other a lot in the minor leagues. We were cool, but I hadn't seen him up until that point. And I remember telling myself, like, if I get the opportunity to see him, that's going to be the first thing I tell him. So I appreciated him being the first person to ever kneel during the national anthem during in MLB season. So
yeah, and everything's kind of come full circle with both you guys, jumping on here with us here locally in San Diego. The story can't be shared enough, especially during this time, and we'll get into that here in a bit with Bruce and and what you got going on with Major League Baseball. But before we get into that, 2020, the year of hardship, really. And you kind of facing, hey, I've got to, maybe hang it up, because, this is a grueling injury, and, what that kind of transition looked like out of, playing full time into kind of an entrepreneurial, getting into the media space on the baseball side. And, that going into what you've created with Extraordinary Athletes. Can you talk about, what your mentality was then and how that came to be?
Yeah, man, 2020, I was really still wanting to play. I felt like I had a lot in the tank still do, actually, even into 2021. But I understood that it was close to transition time. 33 right now. The game is just getting younger. We talk about guys like Fernando Tatis and Juan Soto. These guys so young, dominating the game. So it was kind of easier for me to look in the mirror and say, okay, you're not a one-dimensional person. You can do multiple different things. Now it's just about going all in with something else and being able to say, hey, what am I good at? What can I possibly get into? So the transition for me had already started to begin a little bit as I saw some media opportunities with ESPN. They were doing KBO on ESPN with no baseball being played. And I said, man, I need to try to jump on here. Like, I have insight. I know about these guys firsthand. So I was able to do that. Continued to do that during the season, just jumping on for 10, 15 minutes here. And then they actually offered me a position to do some games as an analyst for the whole game. So I was able to do that a few times. And that was really when I started to realize, okay, maybe this is the next step. Maybe this is something I can get into. But at the same time, you mentioned Extraordinary Athletes, which is my business that I've started. I was trying to find a way to give back to the youth. And I did that through a camp in San Diego, and I wanted to continue to do that. And so I wanted to say, okay, what's the best way for me to be able to give back all this information that I have learned about athletics, about success inside and outside the sport, how I've used my platform. And I said, you know what? I can start a podcast. Like, I can get something going with the podcast and be able to offer this information back. And then I said, you know what, let me get other people on the podcast so they can offer the information, because it's not just about me. It's about being able to, like I said earlier in this podcast, is being able to take something from every little single person. So I said, let me give people the platform to do that, not just myself, and was able to start doing that. And really it turned into a program to where I can offer my services to help other athletes in their platform initiatives, whether that be trying to figure out a way to be an entrepreneur, whether that be transitioning outside the game, whether that be something they're interested in, media, real estate, whatever that looks like. And then through an opportunity with the Cardinals, and me being diversity and inclusion certified, I had the opportunity to bring a program together for the Cardinals and for other organizations for diversity and inclusion, which obviously we know today is huge. And it's been an opportunity for a lot of growth in a lot of organizations. And we're starting to recognize how important it is. So that's something that we're doing today with Extraordinary Athletes. And I'm really proud of that.
Man, that just really ties in, your initial answer, how we kicked this thing off with, what did you learn from 2020? And I remember, in, the April, May months, everything being shut down. And in terms of, baseball fans here locally and abroad, the only thing available was Korean baseball. And, just really jumping at that, that opportunity and really seizing the moment and grinding it out. And, I can totally see that this, has led to other opportunities for you and just that trajectory. Now, you bet on yourself, your authentic self. And now that's gotten you into a position where now you're working with Major League Baseball. You said, the Cardinals diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. And now you're able to, work towards making the game, resonate with our youth and, frankly, African-American youth, in what Major League Baseball can do about, getting more representation. And so I guess my next question is, how are you bringing, more of that, kind of dog mentality, entrepreneurial mindset, to Major League Baseball? And showing, in many ways, on that same token, it's cool to invest in yourself and be an entrepreneur and, be more than an athlete, kind of what you're doing with Extraordinary Athletes.
Yeah, I think for me, it's something that I've been doing since day one. It's about athletes kind of telling their story, being able to dive into their backgrounds, being able to dive into their experiences. That is a lot of what understanding what DEI is being open to other people's backgrounds, experiences, their perspectives, throwing away our unconscious biases and actually figuring out who other people are. That's what I've always been able to do as an international player, as someone that's always used their background as an opportunity to be an example for others. Those things have always been important to me. So now it's just about diving in deeper with them. And being able to be creative with them. I think that's the biggest thing, is like a lot of times we get so stuck on one certain way to do something. And I think that's really important when we talk about DEI, whether it be an organization, a business, a team, whatever that looks like. I think a lot of times we're stuck in the same motion of doing the same things over and over. But it's like, no, let's be creative with this. Let's highlight positivity. How can we highlight positiveness when we're talking about these issues? A lot of times it's negative. It's so negative, but let's flip the narrative this time. let's say what are some of the positive things that are happening in our community? What are some of the positive things happening in our culture and some of the positive things happening in our society?
Mm,
So I think that's one of the biggest things. I think when you highlight things that are positive, I
mm,
think that has an opportunity to stick in people's brains and say, okay, if that's a positive thing, I can do that. You
mm.
know, I can be like that, or I can strive to go get better in that area. So for me, it's about creativity, telling your story, and having the platform to have people understand you. And I think as athletes, that's one thing that we have to do better is kind of break that barrier between media and, you know, and being open and authentic. You said the word authentic earlier. It's like, if we're able to do that a little bit better today, instead of being more real, as people say, more real instead of fake,
Mm.
then we open our doors for other opportunities, and it just makes for a better society.
Right, right. I love that. And you're in this position with Major League Baseball to kind of be in these rooms with leadership and hold accountable, Major League Baseball for, initiatives and progress we'd all love to see from Major League Baseball, and not just be performative. I think this last year has shown who's actually putting real action behind their programs. If we're talking about tangible changes in the sport, hiring changes, or giving players or former players opportunities after retirement, or just really going outside of that comfort zone in bringing to the audience, this is what we're doing to tackle major issues that stem outside of the lines. And we
Yeah,
cross
that's
paths.
the thing too, though. It's not
Sure.
always tangible. We don't always see it right during the moment, right? Like a lot of these things are a process, and it's about changing the culture of a team or organization or a business. A lot of times we don't get to see this from the outside looking in. But these are important changes that need to happen, and the progress is really important, and how fast we're able to progress. I think those are some of the biggest things that need to happen. Is like, you know, a lot of times in today's society, today's world, we're so eager to quantify something, put it into numbers.
What are
But
the metrics, right?
what are the
What are the
metrics about it?
deliverables?
Yeah, sometimes some of these conversations that we have to have, they're not measurable. They need to just be done in a certain way to where it says, okay, things are starting to change. We see the culture in things, the way people are thinking, the way people are reacting. Like that's when you start to see those differences.
Mm. Super important, that one-on-one, just education, or things that, like you said, are invisible in some ways, but through the work that you're doing, you're actually making an effect. You're making a change. And so kind of going back to Bruce, right, and how we crossed paths this past year, and I'd say early 2021. That's where we all kind of have this collective thought of using our platforms to do more here in the San Diego community, and spread that information. Apart from initiatives and your baseball camp that you got going on this off season. But I would be remiss if we didn't touch on kind of some current events that are happening this week. And I'd love to get your take on what was in the news. I think for a couple days now, is Zlatan, right? Soccer star, coming out and saying, in a sense, shut up and dribble, to LeBron James, and that athletes should essentially continue to just sticking to sports, stay quiet when it comes to advocacy work, and that local politics shouldn't be left up to the athlete, that career politicians should handle that. And so with that still being a current topic of conversation, what would be one thing you would tell our youth, right? High school, college age, younger kids, who are seeing this and are wondering, how should I go about using my voice and harnessing my platform really to either advocate for change? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think part of it is what you just mentioned not too long ago is education. Educating yourself on whatever it is, the subject that you're looking to talk about or looking to be involved in, is don't be afraid to go out there and find the facts. Go find the facts before you put out your opinions. And one thing I would say to Ibrahimovic is hey, sports are different nowadays. We don't have the one-dimensional athlete all the time now. Now it's guys that are getting involved in these other aspects. These guys have influence in these other aspects, and these other avenues of life in general. So I think that's important to remember is like athletes today, they have an influence that they never had. So why not take advantage of that? Why not be able to dive into other communities? Why do I need to close myself off to one community when I know that I have the ability to affect multiple different communities in a positive aspect? That's like telling somebody just, hey, any normal guy that has a job somewhere, that's like, go
That,
do your job. That's just your job. That's not who you are. If who I am means I want to impact and be able to help other people in different ways, why not allow me to go do that? Nobody's stopping you. So I think that those are important things to remember when we're talking about the youth today is like, don't feel like you have to be stuck in a box. I had my walk-up song was Kevin Gates. I got 6 jobs. Like I'm a baseball player, but look, I can do multiple other things. Like this ain't just one thing. So I think that that's one thing the youth needs to remember is, hey, if you want your hand in multiple different areas, that's okay. But educate yourself and figure out what's going on in those specific areas so people, one, take you seriously, and two, you can actually make a positive difference.
for sure. For sure. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the way the universe is lined up, but you are probably like the perfect person to touch on this right now, being that like you have had that experience and you wear many hats. You're in so many different things, going on at any one given time that you can attest to it because you're living it. And you wouldn't say anything that you wouldn't, do the research on and put yourself behind. And so I think, that's really a really great take on it. And I see that we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here in a bit. So I'll maybe end with one last question, and then we'll close. But I'm following you on Sirius XM and on the MLB Network. Now that we're into spring training, obviously the big news out of San Diego is the spring locking in Tatis, right? As hometown fan, and them, possibly really turning some heads this year in the National League West. And I think just seeing him go slam Diego yesterday against Arizona, what would you say, specifically about his long-term deal, what that looks like in terms of a proud investment in not just a player, but everything he represents, right? For the culture, for where baseball's headed, and for your hometown. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, for me, it's the Padres couldn't have done any better. Honestly, I think it's a steal. This guy, he's a guy that could quite honestly make a lot more money than what the Padres offered him and what they signed him for. So I think the San Diego community should be very happy. There's so much depth within the team, not just talking about Tatis, but this whole team in general, from offense to defense, pitching. Every part of it is going to be huge for the Padres. I'm very happy about the Tatis signing. Always been a San Diego Padre fan. Even when I was playing with the Cardinals, even with the Marlins, like I still love the Padres. So I will always follow them. Fernando Tatis is a game changer. He's a guy that's going to change the culture. He's already done so. He's already changing the culture in baseball. He's becoming the new face of baseball. So why not lock up someone like that? That's not only a great baseball player, but somebody that's so marketable in the community. Somebody that already stressed and expressed wanting to be a part of San Diego's whole future and being able to say, I want to be cemented in this legacy. That's the type of guy I want to lock up if I'm San Diego. That's the type of guy I want to get behind. That's the kind of guy I want to throw on his jersey and be able to rock it everywhere I go in San Diego. So the huge ups to San Diego for doing that. The Padres, the front office, and Fernando Tatis is going to be somebody exciting to watch for a long time to come now.
Sure. And just talking about, cementing yourself, right? Having Tony on, this past week, and and what his dad has done to change so much of this city in the person that he was, right? It's the accolades and hitting titles, all-star games, you name it. But people can't say a bad word about it, the person that he was. And I feel like we're already getting that sense of, who Fernando is off the field, very just measured, kind of mature and brings that flair to the game. But, culturally, I think you nailed it right on the head. It couldn't be a better move for this time. And so we're super excited to be rooting them on this year. So, I just wanted to close with, thanking you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, X. Super candid conversations, but, talking about real issues and, just want to, see what you have going on here in the next, week, months to come. If you can, just let our folks know what you have going on, everything you got going on, these days.
Yeah, definitely. First, I thank you for having me on here. I'm excited about kind of one project that I kind of got going forward is I'm hosting the first player-to-player podcast for MLB.com. And I think it just kind of represents and embodies like what I've hoped to do for a long time. And that's just give people a platform, give athletes a platform to be able to open up and talk about who they are, not just about on the field, but open up and talk about who they are as a person, whether that be about family, whether that be about business, whether that be about what we've talked about today, the mentors that have been so supportive in their life. I think those are some of the layers and that we get to pull back from these athletes, and people get to have an inside look. And more specifically for baseball, because the game is getting younger, the generations, they're not going to be watching a 3-hour-long game. So they need to be invested in the person. They need to figure out what goes on behind the jersey, and I think that's what I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for that MLB podcast dropping with your host, Xavier Scruggs, coming real soon. So, but other than that, man, just looking forward to each day. Got a new baby girl on the way here pretty soon. Excited about that. And just raising up these boys and soon a girl to be great young people and to mature one day into somebody that people can look up to.
For sure, man. And, congratulations on the new addition.
Thank you.
Just watching from afar, man, you're already doing a great job, with so much that we were able to see, electronically, digitally. But, that's to the core of who you are. It's through your upbringing and your story and your journey. I'm sure you're touching kids out in Tampa, touching lives, but, you're already a mentor. And so we're kind of at that phase in life where, kids are already looking up to you, whether they're your children or not. And so I just, thank you for coming on and not only being a part of, the All-Star Advocacy team, but we're going to keep following, we're going to keep pushing you and lifting up, everything you got going on. So just want to thank you for your time, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bro?
Sounds good, man. Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
All right, buddy. Take care.